What was your experience growing up Asian? Hello everyone, welcome back to After Our Happy Hour. We are your chaotic but cathartic co-hosts. I'm Sharon.
I'm Vicky.
I'm Jamila.
So this month, we're dedicating all of our episodes to AAPI month. And if you don't know what that is, AAPI stands for Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So essentially, the entirety of May is where we celebrate and honor this community and different cultures within the community. And especially with the current rise in Asian hate crimes and just sentiment, racism in general. We personally just wanted to highlight our own cultures, what it means to be an Asian in America, and empower each other and hopefully some other people however we can. Plus, we've never had an episode where we've talked about our Asianness. So let's get started. In today's episode, to kickstart the month, we're going to be talking about our experiences growing up Asian and also talking a little bit about our culture as me, Korean American, and Jam and Vicky as Chinese Americans.
Well, for me, I was born here, but I moved to Hong Kong when I was a few months old. Lived there for 7 years before I moved to San Francisco and have been here ever since. So I would say I grew up around Asian culture all my life. I mean, I lived literally in Hong Kong. And for me specifically, as a Chinese American in San Francisco, the Asian population is pretty big, so I've never felt very out of place. Plus, the specific community that I live in is very Asian dominated, as well as the elementary school, middle schools, and high schools, and even, college that I went to is all Asian dominated. So I feel like I've always had a sense of what the Asian culture is like and my Asian identity. And as I got older, I became more proud of our culture.
Okay. I grew up in Oakland, which had a pretty big diversity of people. And so I think all throughout school, I had Asian people to relate to or hang out with. But then I went to Chinese school growing up, and my parents were pretty strict on me knowing Chinese and only speaking Chinese and having to learn my culture. So I grew up embracing everything, and I was never really shamed for being Asian. Obviously, I got the whole ching chong ling long kind of jokes, but I was too young to realize that's kind of racist.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was about it. But then I never felt ashamed of my culture just because I grew up around Asians and everyone wasn't ashamed of it. It was just oh, you're Asian, he's black, she's white. Everybody was who they were, and there was no judgment on what your race was.
I feel like for me, I was never ashamed of it, but because when I first moved here, I wanted to fit in so bad. So I just thought of, I guess, hiding my Asian identity or Asian self because I want to fit in with everyone else, even though everyone else was Asian, but our upbringing was obviously different. So I tried to, I guess, make myself more Western and try to fit in, essentially. But I also agree with how I never spoke English at home, even though I'll try to learn English. And I beg my mom or my parents to speak to me in English because I want to learn it. And they're like, no, we're not going to speak it to you. And I was like, how do you expect me to learn it? But now I'm really grateful that I never spoke English at home because I would say, not to brag, my Chinese is better than most, 90% of Asian Americans.
So my growing up story is probably a little different from Jam and Vicky, but I grew up in a very small, predominantly non-Asian community, as in I had one close Asian friend and we'd have to drive 2 hours to go to the nearest Asian supermarket. And so growing up had a pretty uncultured experience. I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, my mom specifically, because she was the typical Asian mom, tiger mom stereotype who prioritized school and studying and grades over everything. And so we used to fight a lot about, oh, why do you have another cheer practice this week? You should be studying for your AP exams and stuff like that. And I just didn't get it because all of my friends' parents seemed so chill and understanding. And so because of that, I just felt I couldn't really relate to anybody. And I just thought my mom was crazy. And I wouldn't say I was shamed either. It was just internal, like subconsciously, I wouldn't want my friends to come over because I hated explaining why we take our shoes off, or if my mom was cooking something and it might smell bad in the kitchen and stuff like that. So I think I did hide myself. I just didn't know I'm hiding it because I'm Asian. And then I went to college. That's when I met so many people who are Asian and could like finally, I felt like heard or like related to. And that's the first time I knew, oh, it was a cultural thing. And I just felt connected to people because it wasn't just me who grew up that way. And I'm sure as a lot of Asian Americans can relate if you know what subtle Asian traits on Facebook is. I remember when that came out, I was so shook. I was like, it's not just my mom who puts pots and pans in the oven, and I don't have to explain to my friends why it's there if they want to bake cookies at my house, you know? That kind of thing. And we'll talk about like how we feel about our culture later, but that's essentially how I grew up.
We always say this, but it's funny because Sharon's parents, out of all three of our parents, are the typical most Asian, strict tiger mom, tiger dad, like very conservative Asian parents out of the three of us.
Yeah. We always say I grew up the most traditional, so I should be most Asian. And in some ways I am, but in other ways I'm really, really not.
That's true.
Do you think maybe it's because you don't have any other really like Asian communities or around you?
Yeah, I think that's why. I think it's also because in college, like most of my friends are Asian, but there's still very, very few Koreans that I know.
That's true. You don't know that many Koreans from college.
It's like 99% Chinese Americans.
Oh shit. We're both Chinese too.
Growing up, most of my friends were Chinese Americans too. And we would talk about, yo, did you get a bad grade? Oh shit, like my parents would be so mad. Or
yeah, no, for me it was, oh shit, I did so bad, and everyone else would be like, huh?
Oh, it's like get a B, and they're like, what do you mean bad? Yeah, I think mine is like a little bit in between Sharon and Jam, just because Oakland's school system is not that great. Everybody knows that. But then because there were also Asian Americans, specifically Chinese people, so I had people to relate to and understand like why getting even an A- is kind of bad. But then when you bring it to like people outside of the Asian circle and you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to get an A, they understood the stereotype of like, oh my god, you're Asian, of course you think that's bad, but then to them it's like you're doing fine. And I was just like, okay, sure. You know what's funny though is like my parents never asked for my grades. They just expected me to do well and never questioned anything. Like I could have been failing English school and they wouldn't have known because they never asked for my report card. They never like did anything. They just automatically assumed that by senior year, if I don't get into college, then I'm a fuck up. But they never asked like throughout the process, you know?
To my parents, more so my mom, she would wait for my progress reports and she would just promptly go downstairs and check the mail. I remember once I got a B in algebra, and that day I went out with my sister-in-law to get the new iTouch, and I called her. I was like, Mom, can I still get this? And she said, you got a B on algebra. Do you think you'd still deserve it? And then she like yelled at me over the phone. I was crying and I hung up, but I still bought it.
Calls to ask to see if you could buy. She says no and you still got it.
Yeah, what the heck? Like growing up, that's such an Asian thing of like, oh, I gotta make sure my parents are in a good mood or I did something right. So that way I can present the situation when it's the best timing.
Yes. I had to do the whole, my mom's not in a good mood or my dad's not in a good mood, so I can't ask. Honestly, I just always went with like, I'm not going to ask because they're going to say no, because my parents grew up hella strict about going out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's like, I can't. My mom said no.
Yep.
My mom rarely let me go over to a friend's house, and my friends basically never came over to my house. And
why is that a thing? Like, would your parents get stressed out?
Yeah.
My parents would get stressed out and I'd be like, Mom, it's literally people my age. Why are you stressing out about what the house looks like or whatever?
Yeah. And getting the contacts and everything, because at that time it was, what's their house number? What's their mom's name? Like, let me talk to them beforehand, which is why I just never went through the process of any of that because it was just such a hassle.
Yeah.
See, I feel like my parents hella drove my introvertedness because as a kid, like all till middle school, I wasn't allowed to go out after school. I don't even know how I had friends because I never hung out with them outside of school. And I never had birthday parties, was never allowed to go to any birthday parties, any of those things. So now that I think about it, I'm like, how did I maintain friendships without like having anything outside of school? That's what I mean by like, because I never got that experience. Now that I'm older, I do the same thing. I'm like, I don't want people over at my house. I don't really want to like hang out with people outside of work or school. Because I'm so like, not every single case, but majority of the time, I'm just like, I grew up living that experience. So now I'm like repeating the same thing.
Yeah, it didn't affect me like that. I feel like
Really?
if anything, it made me want to go out even more. Especially in college, I feel like I just want to like take advantage of this freedom.
Oh, yeah.
And just go out.
Dude, moving into college was the best thing. I was like, this is what it's like to not have to ask my parents for permission.
Dude,
Not that I even did anything crazy. It was literally just hanging out with someone like outside of the dorms until like 9:30 p.m.
No,
Mhm.
my biggest thing was like last minute plans. I could never do that at home.
Oh,
Always
yeah.
had to give a week warning, and it's like once a week I was allowed to go out. Like if I went out Wednesday, couldn't go out the whole entire week anymore. And so when I went to college, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, always went out for dinner with friends.
Dude, even now, even coming back home, I still plan for the days of, okay, I went out this day, so I shouldn't go out these next 2 or 3 days, so I'll stay home for dinner because I'm just so used to that. Like, always having to be home or just never going out too many days in a row, or else, like, my mom will get mad. Not that
Yeah.
she would now, but still.
Dude, I would always get confused because like being home all the time, sometimes I'd get on my parents' nerves, right? Specifically my mom's. So I'm like, why don't you let me leave the house more then if I get on your nerves so often? But I'm wondering if I'll be like that as an Asian. Did I just speak being an Asian mom into existence? If I ever become a mom. Anyway.
I feel like we'd not as strict, right?
Definitely not.
I don't think I would be. I like to think I'll be fun.
What do you mean by fun though? Like let them do whatever they want?
Oh, no.
No.
Like they could actually they could have birthday parties if they wanted one, or I'll be a lot more open for them to go to their friend's house. And I think for me, because I think one, I'm an extrovert, I like meeting people. I would want to be friends with like my kids' friends' parents, where I think for my parents, they never really befriended any of my friends' parents.
I don't know why. When Jam was like, yeah, I'm extroverted, I want to meet their other parents, I was like, yeah, you could meet some guys. And then I realized you've been married at that point. And they're probably married.
What kind of person do you take me for?
I just, because right now we're just like, anytime you meet someone new, it could be an opportunity for something more, or meeting their friends that could be something more. So when you said that, I was like, wow, you can meet somebody. And then I realized at that point in life, you're like done meeting people.
Unless I get divorced and I'm a single
There's
mom.
that.
And I'm open to that.
There's that. Yeah. You find a single dad too.
All right, let's not speak that into existence, okay?
Okay.
So I feel like as we're growing up, or even now, there's a lot of stereotypes around our culture. What are some of those stereotypes that you could think of?
The only stereotype I think I fit into was like I grew up playing piano, violin, I was in orchestra.
Stereotypes that I fit in. I'm a terrible driver.
That was gonna be mine. I'm not as bad as Vicky, but not that great.
Yeah, tell everyone the story about Vicky almost killing me in the first time I drove with her in a car.
Okay, given the first time I ever drove Sharon was probably the first time that I drove without like my parents in the car. And so I rented a car for me and Sharon to go to a cafe that day. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to drive us. And I almost killed us on the freeway because I didn't see a car when I tried to switch lanes. And then I was like, okay, let me not freak out. And so we arrived to our destination and I parked. And then for a hot second, I was like, I literally cannot turn off the car, Sharon. And what I did was so dumb that it like didn't click in Sharon's head that maybe this was what was happening. But she was looking around the car and she was like, I also don't know why you can't turn off the car. And we looked around for a hot second, like, what is wrong with this car? And then Sharon goes, you didn't put the car in park.
Wait, I have a question. If you didn't put the car in park, why was it not moving? Was your foot just on the brake the entire time?
Oh, no. I think I like turned. So I think you could turn the key, but you can't completely turn off the car if it's not in park. So then I turned the key so that it's like a notch before when you like flip the engine on. And I was just like, I can't like do anything else after this. And you're supposed to be able to take out the keys. And I'm embarrassed, but it's fine.
Yeah, never getting in a car with Vicky ever again.
It's fine. I haven't driven in 2 years, so I don't even trust myself to drive.
I'm just say I grew up in SF, so there's really not that much of a point for me to drive. And because I've been pretty protected by my parents growing up, so my dad drove me everywhere.
I was going to ask, were there any questions that you guys would hate being asked growing up or now?
Oh, what's my Chinese name?
That was mine!
Dude, every time, like, growing up, I had my Chinese name, and sometimes people would ask. And then after I tell them mine, they'd be like, so what's mine? I'm like, bitch, the fuck I know!
Yeah, me too. Wait, that was literally my answer. And it's like, I understand that you might think because we have a different language, you have a name. But don't you realize your parents gave you the name that you have? So what makes you think there's a set name out there for you in another language?
I never got asked that. I feel like because I grew up in a really Asian-dominated community, I never had any questions that was particularly out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
So, next question. What do you think is the biggest cultural difference between your own culture and Western culture? I have one. Wearing shoes in the house. Like, I don't think that should be an Asian culture thing. It should be a everybody culture thing. Like, why the fuck would you wear your shoes inside the house onto your bed? Like, have you...
Oh my god, especially if your house is carpet or if your room is carpet.
Like, do you not know what your shoes step on? Shit.
My biggest question, after you shower, your feet are clean. So you step onto a rug, I assume, to, dry it. And then you walk on that same floor that your shoes stepped in. And then you get into your bed.
I truly don't know. I truly don't know, because I'm like, your shoes have been throughout the whole world. Like, please take it off. Like, it's not an Asian thing. It should be a hygienic thing that everybody follows.
I don't know why I was embarrassed of that growing up. Like, oh, why do you guys take your shoes off? Because you should.
Most of my friends were Asian, so even when I went over, it was just common action that we did. So for you guys, when you guys had the chance to go over to your non-Asian friends, were they actually just like, oh, you wear shoes and stuff?
Yeah, I would wear shoes in my friend's house. They'll be like, oh, you can take it off or leave them on.
When they say that, I leave them on because that means they've been walking around their house with their shoes on, and I'm not trying to get my socks dirty. The fuck?
Dude, even us, like, I wear indoor shoes in the house because I'm that anal about clean feet.
Did you guys know that that strip of like bedding at the end of a hotel is meant for people to put their shoes on that shit?
Wait, I heard about that before.
Why would you enable that in your bed? I don't know. No.
Wait, is that strip like on top of everything?
Yeah.
It's like
one?
at the end of your bed on top of your covers.
Bruh, if you wear your shoes on your bed, I'm saying you're hot and hygienic. I don't care who you are.
I had a couple. One specifically for Korean culture, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if Chinese culture is like this too, but honorifics, is that the right word?
Oh, we don't have that.
In Korean culture, we have casual or informal and formal language. So the way that you speak to your friends is different than the way that you would speak to your parents or someone older than you.
Yeah.
And even someone older than you by a year, you use formal language.
I learned what it's called. The formal is called 존댓말 or something like that.
존댓말.
존댓말. Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned something.
Every time I hear about how you have to, even just a year older, you have to respect that person, I just think of Jackson and JB from GOT7, how they're 3 months apart, but JB always asks Jackson to call him Hyung.
Yeah, I think that's a big cultural difference. The second one I was going to say is the music industry as a whole. Training and pre-debut and comebacks and stuff like that is a very Korean culture versus in Western culture, like if you have talent, anybody can kind of become their independent artist. Versus in Korea, I feel like it's a lot like way more rigorous and there's a whole structure around the industry. So I think those two are the biggest cultural differences that I thought of.
Yeah.
I feel like that also goes into the entertainment industry in Asian culture or in Asia in general, how the focus is a lot more on like your appearance or is less accepting than like the Western culture, the Western entertainment industry.
Sure. Yeah, as Chinese people, we don't have honorifics. The only thing I can think of is like you probably don't call your parents or like someone older than you like you. You say like auntie, uncle, or like you address them by a certain name, but you never say like you. That's the only thing I can think of.
I feel like in general, the Asian culture, we just address our elderlies with more respect.
Yeah.
It's the politeness in Asian culture.
Yeah. Like, you can never really address anyone by their names. Even if you don't know what relation you have with them, you always address them by, like, auntie or uncle, you know?
Yeah. You know how, like, people here in America, if, like, you know their friend's mom, it's like, hi, Lily, how are you doing today? Can you imagine saying that to an Asian parent?
Bro, if my kid ever said, like, Sharon, I was like, the fuck? That's Auntie Sharon to you.
Yeah. But not even that. Did you know that like some people out there that after they get to a certain age, they call their parents by their first name?
Yes.
That is so weird to me.
I understand if it's like stepmom, stepdad.
Yeah.
Then you can call them indirectly by their first name, but
like, I think even stepmom, stepdad, even if you don't want to call them dad or mom, you should, at least for us, we used to call them like auntie or uncle because they're still older than you.
Yeah. I think we take the whole like older, elderly respect thing very seriously, which I really like.
Yeah. Traditional.
Not me being culture shocked, but other Asian Americans when they go to China. But for me growing up, I was super used to like squatty toilets. Like I saw it all the time. I used it all the time. So it was never weird to me, but because I stay abroad and some of my friends are Asian Americans and they were just so not used to squatty toilets, they're like, oh my god, I don't know how to use this. I was like, what do you mean you don't know how to use it? Like, you really just squat on that. It's like cleaner than a porta potty.
Dude, no. I have not a traumatic experience, but
Did you fall in one?
no. Okay, I never grew up squatting. Okay, I always had the privilege of having a toilet. But one time when I was younger, I don't remember how young I was. My family went to Korea for the summer, and in America, you have summer break for 3 months ish, but in Korea, you're still in school. So my mom put me in school, and one day I refused to ever use the restroom squatting because I was terrified of falling. So I held it. And the bus dropped me off at the bottom of our little road that went all the way up to my grandma's place. I booked it. And I opened the door to the apartment or to the house. And as soon as I opened, I peed my pants. I did not make it to the toilet. So ever since then, I refuse to squat pee anywhere. And I never have. So can't say I'm used to that.
The other thing that I was going to say, a cultural difference is the amount of school that I went to compared to like all my friends. It was insane because I would go like in the morning, go to English school, and then after school, go to Chinese school. And then on the weekends, I'd have either tutoring or an extracurricular activity that I would do. And that was so weird to people. But then I was like, that's not that weird.
It's because school here is the max versus in Asia, it's normal to go to school, go to hagwon or like SAT or school prep and just get ahead.
Yeah, when I went to school in Hong Kong, I would have school from 7 a.m. till basically whenever it ended, and then tutoring until 6 p.m. and, you know, go home, eat, and I had a bunch of homework, you know, even as a first grader. And then on the weekends, I would have these extracurriculars like piano, art, and dance.
I remember my parents would tell me about when they were kids and how strict they were, because it's like girls' hair can't be like shorter or longer than this length, and then guys' hair had to be a certain like buzz cut basically. And if their hair was longer than their ears, they'd have to immediately cut it or things like that. And I'm just like, damn. That's like strict.
Dude, speaking of parents, when they talk about their school days, and it just sounds like they have to walk miles and miles over mountains and rivers just to get to school. And I just remember my mom is always like, "You're so lucky that I could just drive you to school." When I was younger, I had to wake up in the early morning and walk. I don't even think it's actually that many miles, but it just sounds like they walk like 10-20 miles over a mountain every day to go to school.
But at the same time, it's so true. They probably had it so much worse than us, which is why they were 10 times more strict. Oh, I was gonna ask, in Chinese culture, do citizens have to go to the military like Korean culture does?
Not that I know of. No.
Okay, I'll add that to the list then. All men have to go into the military for 2 years, and that's like a big cultural difference.
Dude, I see the reflection of my Gossam photo cards, and I just think about when JB and Jingya has to go.
I know. But they're like all doing their solo activities. I feel like their comeback as a whole group would be after their military service.
What?
I'll say maybe I'll meet Mark Twain by then, so it's not like...
By then, he doesn't have to go in the military.
I know, but like by the time they come back, like maybe I've already met Mark Twain, so I'll,
I hate you.
Okay. If you guys have children in America and live in America, do you think you will parent similarly to the way that your parents did?
Yeah, I think I would for sure send them to Chinese school because the only thing my dad has asked of me if I ever had kids is that they speak Chinese.
Yeah, I will pass on the Chinese like cultures and values. I think the things that really shaped me as a person, for sure pass those on. I'll also only speak to them in Chinese at home or make my parents speak to them in Chinese. I don't think I'll send them to Chinese school unless it's really necessary. And as much as I like to say I don't want to be like my mom when I become a mom, but I think I would kind of force them to go to like extracurriculars just because for me, I regretted not continuing. So I would want my kids to have a chance to try anything they want and decide if they want to stick to it when they're a little bit older.
Yeah, I would want my kids, if I ever have kids, first language to be Korean. I don't know how that's gonna play out because my Korean's getting worse by the minute. But yeah, my mom would always be like, one day if you have children, you'll understand why I made you do all these things because you're gonna do the same thing. And I feel like I am. So thanks, Mom.
I just wonder of us three, would Sharon also be the most quote unquote Asian stereotypical mom?
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Vicky would be most lax, most understanding. And then Jam would be like a mixture of both. And I feel like I would try to be the chill, lax mom.
I just want all our kids to be close.
Imagine if one of our kids marries one of your kids or one of each other's kids.
We're going to be in-laws.
Well, we're already going to be the cool aunt anyway.
Hell
so
yeah!
might as well.
Oh my god, I don't know why this triggers something, but I don't know why we didn't talk about this, but getting hit when we're growing up.
I was just going to say that. That was on my list. Like getting beat.
Yeah.
Not like fully beat, but
like you got like smacked around.
I got smacked in the butt a lot by my grandparents because I'm a girl, so they didn't want to smack the other parts where it could leave marks. So they were like, oh, your butt has the most fat, so let me smack you on the butt.
Oh, I got hit my palm a lot.
Palm and my feet with a comb or I was going to say a washing machine. Not a washing machine. Oh, what is that? A
clothing rack.
Oh, what it's called?
Yeah,
A hanger. The metal ones?
Oh no, mine were plastic and then they'd break. Yeah. When I went to school in Korea, if you get a certain percentage below average or whatever, you get smacked by the teacher with the ruler. And I got under the average, but the teacher was like, you don't have to get smacked because you're American. I didn't have to get snacked, so I thought I was so cool, but like that just means one, Americans, you're below average, so you're underscore, and you're weak, so I'm not gonna hit you.
So to wrap this up, what are you guys most proud of in your culture, and also how did you feel before versus how do you feel now about your culture?
So I kind of mentioned it in the beginning, just because I think I grew up in a predominantly Asian community and neighborhood. I don't have very different feelings about my culture then and now. If anything, I definitely feel a lot more proud. I embrace my culture and my Asian identity a lot more. Especially after staying abroad in China, I think I just realized that I identify and I enjoy being in my country more than I do here sometimes, honestly. So yeah, proud to be an Asian, a Chinese American. More like Chinese, but yeah.
I know at this point.
I think I've always been at my roots, but now I'm being even more connected to my roots.
I was going to say I'm proud that I am Asian, Korean specifically. Maybe the way I grew up was meant to happen so that I could appreciate my culture a lot more, even if it was a lot later in my life. And considering growing up, I avoided like anything Korean at all costs. Now I'm like fully embraced and proud of it. Honestly, I'm so proud that South Korea, which is basically only slightly bigger than California, has made that big of an impact on the world. And yeah.
I'm also super proud. I think I grew up not feeling any like shame or anything, but now, especially with my feelings towards America, I'm even more proud to have a culture and just being raised with the morals that I was raised with. And like speaking another language is fucking dope. And I am very glad that I was able to learn Chinese and like be able to communicate with my parents in my own native language. Like that's pretty awesome to me. So I'm very, very proud.
So this was our conversation about our Asian experiences growing up and the first episode of our AAPI series. Hope you guys enjoy this episode and look forward to our future ones where we talk about Asian love, Asian American artists, and more. Okay, bye!